Hi everybody and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to be making some soups. It's coming on that season, and although I eat soup year round, I think most people think of it as a fall/winter type dish, but these are recipes that you could make any day of the year. They are also very budget friendly, using ingredients that probably you have on your shelf, at least on the occasion. So we're gonna make some budget-friendly soups, and to go alongside that, we gotta have some kind of cornbread. I mean, we're in the South, so we're gonna make a cheesy cheddar cornbread muffin to go alongside our soups. And that's actually where I'm gonna get started. I have my oven preheated to 425 degrees. And we're just gonna mix up our ingredients. I have here about 2.5 cups of cornmeal. Then I've got about 3/4 of a cup of just white flour, a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon, some baking powder, and I'm just going to whisk those ingredients together, my dry ingredients. Want to make sure that salt is evenly distributed between or among your mixture. Then I'm gonna add in some cheddar cheese. This is just shredded cheddar, about 2 cups, 2-ish, 2.5. Measure with your heart on that one. Now, for the wet ingredients, I have here some buttermilk, some vegetable oil, about 1/4 of a cup or so, plus 2 tablespoons, some regular milk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, on hand, they actually do make a powdered buttermilk that I use at home quite a bit. But if you don't have any of that, you can just, whatever amount you need, like in this case, say 1.5 cups of buttermilk, and then add a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a teaspoon of vinegar, and let it set for a minute, and you'll get that tang that the buttermilk provides. So that's fine too. Then we need 3 eggs. I'm just going to dump them in the liquid mixture. Go a little closer this time, so I'm not getting it everywhere. 3 eggs. And then I like to take my whisk and beat the eggs into the wet ingredients before I add them to the dry. And this is just a delicious cornbread mixture. If you don't want it to be cheesy, leave out the cheese. If you wanted to use a different kind of cheese, you totally could, whatever you like. Colby is really good. Pepper Jack is really good if you want a little bit of a spice. But I just like cheddar in mine. Let me wipe up my mess a little bit. Then we're going to combine the wet ingredients with the dry. That simple. I love cornbread. It's just one of my favorite things in the world. I'm going to mix all that together. And again, as with any quick bread type thing, which a cornbread is, it totally depends on the humidity in the area you're working. You might need a little more liquid, a little less liquid. But this is a good basis. You would need to add, if you needed to add, start with like a tablespoon at a time. Don't just go in adding, but this is perfect. You want it to be, liquid-ish. Let me get rid of these. Runny just a little bit so you can easily put it in your pan. Now, I am making muffins. If you wanted to bake this as, a loaf, you could totally put it in a baking dish of any kind. But I find for portion size, I like the muffin better. Okay, get down in there, make sure all of your dry ingredients are combined. I did line my muffin pan, and I'm actually going to spray it just a little bit because I find that liners can stick to whatever it is that cupcakes or whatever you're using them for. I really like to use an ice cream scoop. I have several different sizes that I use for so many things besides ice cream. This is perfect for things like cornbread or muffins. I'm a lefty, and these things are designed for right-handed people. They really need to make these for lefties too. It's really awkward sometimes to try to use it when it's on the wrong side. I'm going to fill these up about 3/4 of the way. The scoop's a tiny bit big. I should have gone with one a little bit smaller. If you wanted to dice up a jalapeno, you could dice up, you know, a jalapeno and put it in there. Or you could add a can of the diced green chilies if you wanted to make it like a Mexican cornbread. That would be delicious. And if I was serving it with like chili or something like that, I certainly would add that to it. I mean, this recipe's very adaptable. If you were wanted to serve this with like a quiche or something like that, you could add some chopped up dill to this, fresh dill. Oh, it would be delicious with that in there. I have enough to make another pan of corn muffins. So let me get my other pan and my liners, if I can find them. Here we go. I keep several, you know, baking dishes like this because I make a lot of things into muffins. I just find for portion control, it's easier and it cooks quicker. So we're gonna just line them with whatever kind of liners that you have. And if you don't want to line them, you don't have to. You can just put it straight in there. I do it mainly for ease of cleanup and the fact that I don't want it to stick. Okay, so just going to fill these up. Your oven does need to be preheated. It's a hot oven. It's 425 degrees. These need to bake for about 20 minutes. If you were doing, say, a round cake pan or a loaf pan of some sort, you would need to increase the time. At least I'd start with 30 minutes and, you know, test it, and I'll show you how to test it at the end. Of course, like anything else, I'm trying not to make a mess on my pan, and I'm not succeeding. You would want to insert a toothpick or a skewer of some sort into the center. If it comes out dry, no wet on it, then you're good to go. Okay, perfect. Now I am going to wipe that batter off because that will just burn on there in the oven. And you know, this is home cooking. It's not going to be perfect. Even professional bakers get that on there. So let's pop this into a 425 degree oven. We'll check it in 20 minutes. I'm going to clean up, and when I come back, we're going to get started on some soup. I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, we're back. Our corn muffins are in the oven, and we're going to get started on a minestrone soup. Now, I love minestrone soup, and there are so many different ways to make it. But we're going to make one that's quick and easy, and that uses things you probably have, again, in your pantry. The theme of today's recipes are budget-friendly and pantry-ready ingredients. So this is actually a pretty big onion, so I'm only going to use half. You want, you know, like a medium-sized onion. and it's just a little bit big. And I love cooked onions, but I don't want the onion to overpower, so I'm only going to use half of it. I just cut it down the center through the root. That holds the pieces together, makes it a little easier to cut. Okay. All righty, let's chop it up. You can use frozen chopped onion if you have. If you don't have any fresh onion, you can use onion powder. Be a little different, but you can use it. I've got my saucepan on my stove, and I'm going to add just a couple of tablespoons or so. I'm going to actually turn it down just a little bit of just a neutral oil. I'm using canola. And I'm going to add my onion and let that start sauteing. I don't want to brown it. I just want it to start softening. Then we're going to need a couple of cloves of garlic. Fresh garlic if you have it. If you cut off the root end of garlic, if you can get it off, this one's hard. The cloves will separate a little bit easier. I love garlic. Oh, I love it so much. It's so good. This one, again, measure with your heart. I'm going to use 2 because those are big cloves. And now put this in a little container. If you smash it with the side of your knife, the skins will come right off. You don't want to add your garlic too early because it'll burn. So we're going to mince it up with our knife, or if you have that little food chopper thing like I use sometimes, great use for this. They actually make little gadgets that you can chop garlic with. That's what they're for. But it's just as easy to use your knife, and that's one less thing in your kitchen. Mince it up kind of fine. If you want to use pre-chopped garlic, go for it. I use that a lot. I just hadn't used this in a while. I thought, well, we'll chop some garlic. If you don't have any garlic, you could use garlic powder, or they sell in the dehydrated garlic that's in little minced pieces. You could use that. If you just don't like garlic, you can leave it out. Now, some people either don't like it or just have a reaction to it. So you use it if you don't have a reaction, because it is so good. All right, let's stir this. Let me get another. I've got a pound of ground beef in this one that's just starting to brown up. We're multitasking because we're making 2 soups today. Let's go ahead and, I got a fly in here. Stir this up. Okay, we're just letting that brown. That's for the next one. All right, now my onion is softening, so I'm going to add the garlic to it. Let that go for about 30 seconds. You don't want that to burn. That would be terrible and would taste awful. All right. Once you start smelling it, let's go ahead and add our seasonings. I'm going to add some chili powder because I want a touch of heat, and some rosemary, which is actually my favorite herb. I love rosemary. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, maybe a pinch more salt. I like to add my spices and seasonings before I add any liquid because the oil blooms the spices. I'm going to add 1 can of chicken broth, and I might need to add more. I'll know at the end of this. Probably do need to add some more. 1 can of drained. Now I'm using the flat Italian style green beans, but if you don't have those, you can use the regular green beans is fine. 1 can of diced tomatoes. I'm using fire roasted because I love the fire roasted. And this is actually a box, but it's equivalent to 1 can of dark red kidney beans. And I gotta say, I'm not a fan of the box. I thought I would be, but I'm really, really not. All right, let's stir all of that together. And I think I am gonna need to add a little bit of water to this. All right. We're gonna add a cup or so of just a shredded coleslaw mix. If you have a head of cabbage, just by all means, use that cabbage, shred it. Yeah, I need to add a little water to this. Let's go ahead and cut you off. I'm not ready for you. Now, for the minestrone, I'm gonna let this simmer for a few minutes before I do anything. Minestrone typically has some kind of a pasta in it. We use either macaroni or broken up spaghetti or something. But if you go to the Hispanic place in your grocery store where they sell the salsas and the taco seasonings and that sort of thing, you will find these little bags of, this is actually used for fideo, which is a Mexican soup, but it's just broken up spaghetti, little tiny thin pieces of pasta. This is 48 cents, so this is a great thing to have on hand. But I don't want to add that till I let that simmer for just a few minutes. So I'm gonna add a little water to this. I'm gonna fill this container with some water, put it on the stove to just simmer, and when I come back, we are going to start on the beefy noodle soup. So I'm gonna just get this switched around, and when I come back, we'll start on the beef noodle soup. Alrighty, now our beef is browned. I did drain off just a little bit of the fat in there with just a paper towel. I am going to go ahead and add about half of this bag of the pasta. I don't want to overwhelm it with too much pasta because that will soak up a lot of the liquids. I added about 3 cups or so of water to it. You could add chicken broth if you wanted to, up to you. To this pot, which is going to be our beef soup, we are going to add 1 package of the dried onion soup mix. This is 100% pantry friendly. These are things that, you know, most of us have on hand. If you don't have the onion soup mix, add in maybe some beef granules and some dried onion, or chop up an onion if you want to and add a little bit of beef stock. But I keep the Lipton, I like the store brand, I like the name brand on this one. I find it's not as salty, the dry onion soup mix. And I don't care for the beefy onion soup mix or any of that. I like just the original beef mix. And for our noodles, we're actually gonna use ramen. Now, these things are like 15, 20 cents a package. You don't have to make ramen noodles with it. You can use the noodles and the seasoning packet to make a soup. It's delicious. Now, you don't want to add your noodles until the end because they cook very quickly. But I am going to take the 2 packages of the flavor mix. I'm not going to add any salt because this is salty. My timer just went off on my phone. Let me shut that up. For our corn muffins, we'll check that in just a second. All right, I like to stir that in a little bit. I am going to add some pepper, but no salt, because the ramen flavoring has salt in it and the soup mix has salt in it. To go along with that, I'm gonna add, now I am doubling my original recipe. I'm gonna add the whole thing, 64 ounces. You could use tomato juice. I'm using V8 juice. I think this makes a wonderful base for soup. It's just delicious. I love it in soups. All right, I'm gonna stir that around. Then I'm gonna add 1 package of frozen mixed vegetables. You can use any blend you like. They sell a multitude of different types of the frozen mixed vegetables. Let me get my, and I'm just gonna let this simmer for about 10 minutes or so to warm those vegetables through, and all of those flavors can marry each other. We'll cover it up, let it go for about 10 minutes. Our minestrone soup is just coming along. All right, let's check our corn muffins. We'll go to the oven and see where we are. I don't know, let's find out together. I think I can tell pretty much they're not done, but let's double check them. Let me grab a toothpick or two. All right, the way you want to know is you want to insert the toothpick into the center, and I think I may be wrong. I think they are ready. So let's take those out of the oven, and I'll show you up close how you know. Okay, pan's hot. See how there's really no, you can't really see it, there we go. There's no liquid on there. You might have a couple of dry crumbs, that's okay. I test several of them, and if the batter is not runny in the middle, you know yours are done. Let's get the other ones and test them. If I can get them out. Oh, let's shut that up. And I don't want to put it on my counter, so let's move everything off my cutting board. Got too much going on here. All right, let's try these. See, they're perfect. They're completely done. What I like to do is let them cool in the pan for maybe 5 minutes. Even if I did not have the liners, I would want them to cool in the pan for just a couple of minutes, and then take them out and put them on a cooling rack to let them finish cooling. If you let them completely cool in the pan, you got to remember that pan is hot, so it's going to keep baking whatever you've got in there. And a lot of times, this holds true for anything, the bottoms may get burned, even though you took it out at the right time. That's why it's very important to let it cool for just a couple minutes to set up, but then take whatever it is, cupcakes or cakes or whatever you're cooking, out of the pan and let it cool on a wire cooling rack. So I'm just going to let these set for a second, stir my soups, take a little quick break, and when I come back, we will wrap up the beefy noodle soup and we'll serve up all of this food. So I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, now our soups are ready to finish up. I'm going to take my 2 packages of my ramen. I'm just going to break them up in my hand because I don't want them to be the big long pieces of ramen. I want them to fit on a soup spoon. If you don't have ramen and you want to just use broken spaghetti or macaroni or whatever, egg noodles, fine too. Any of it would work. I just pretty much always have these on hand. My Aaron likes them. I like them. Sometimes I just get a craving for them. I don't know. They cook in 3 minutes. So we will just put that back on and let that simmer. And I want to show you how to finish up your minestrone. Now it is done. The noodles are soft. You see the little noodles in there. And the way you want to finish this soup is you want to stir in some grated Parmesan cheese. I'm doing about half to 3/4 of a cup. And you just want to stir that in, cut your heat, and that will melt and be delicious. You could also serve some on the side if you wanted to. Let's put some in a bowl. It's done. Oh, look how good that looks. I love minestrone. As you will have noticed, this is a meat-free dish. I use chicken broth. If you want it to be completely vegetarian, just use vegetable broth. That will be delicious. So let's put that over here. Let's let this go for 3 minutes, and let's go back over here and talk about this cornbread. I have put some on a plate. I'm going to show you. Remember when I sprayed that? You see how that just comes off perfectly clean? Move my trash can. I want to show you the inside of these. It's delicious, and that cheese just melts. And of course, I mean, you know, you got to have a little butter with it. So let's add a little tiny bit of butter, or a whole lot of butter. I mean, you got to have butter with cornbread. It's just a must, I think. Let it soften just a little bit. I got quite a bit. Let me kind of divide that one in half a little bit. And let's see what we taste like. Guarantee you it's good. That's really good. There's our minestrone. Let's check our ramen. It doesn't take long at all for those to cook. You might want to go in there after about a minute and break up the noodles. Ooh, I love cornbread. Slathered in butter. And if you wanted to make this one vegetarian, leave out the beef and use one of the flavors of ramen that doesn't have meat in it. They do have them. Any of the flavors you like, you could swap it in for the beef. I chose beef because that is my favorite, but you can use whatever kind you want. And those cook in about 3 minutes, about done. And to serve that up, you just want to put some of it in a bowl. Oh, so good. And then clean up your bowl. And you've got a delicious, easy meal that you could make. I mean, this entire, if you weren't doing what I'm doing, you could make this entire meal in under 30 minutes. You really could. So you could have 2 different types of soup. You could have your corn muffins ready to go. Thank you for joining with me. Try these recipes and let me know, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.